Hi, class! As a future teacher, you will influence your students in a lot of ways, and you will encounter moral dilemmas that would test your principles as a human being and as a teacher. Overcoming these moral dilemmas would help you acquire knowledge, skills, and values that would be significant in your teaching itself. In line with this, before I proceed for today's discussion, I would like to share two situations that might be helpful in your understanding of the lesson. Situation number one: you are the department chairperson and you are responsible for checking the salary requirements of the instructors under your department. As the person assigned, you always make sure that everybody complies with the policy before receiving compensation. One of your colleagues, who also happens to be your friend, called you at noon and asked you to consider him from all the requirements and sign his payslip. He further reasoned out that he is currently short of budget at home. Situation number two: the trimester is coming to an end. And any moment, you will submit the final grades of your students. In your estimation, most of your students will pass the subject, but some will not make it. 2 days before the submission, one of your students who is also a candidate for graduation verify his status in your subject handle. Actually, in the whole trimester, you only met him thrice in your class, so basically he did not perform that much. According to him, he is taking his internship and your subject simultaneously. The internship is quite demanding of his time and schedule. In the end, he begs you to let him pass for him to graduate on time. If you are the teacher, what are you going to do? What are you going to sacrifice and what are you going to pick? So it's quite difficult class because either way, you might offend someone, you might actually cause misunderstanding, right? So example lang yan sa mga moral dilemmas that you may encounter in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the foundational principles of morality and you. First and foremost, what is morality? I know that you've heard of this word many times, and this time around, as a review, morality class refers to the quality of human acts by which we call them right or wrong, good or evil. There are many factors that affect our sense of morality, and one is our culture. Since we differ when it comes to our culture class, it means that we also have different perceptions of what morality is. That makes morality as a relative subject. When we say relative, what could be right to you may be wrong to me, and what could be evil to you may be good to me. Now, your human action is right when it generally conforms with the norm, rule, or law of morality. And say for example, class, no, if a behavior is acceptable in a particular society, then we can say that it conforms with the law of morality. However, if it is not acceptable in a particular society, then we cannot consider it as moral. Say for example, I told you a while ago that our sense of morality is affected by our culture. Now, there are things, class, that are considered as taboos in our culture. For example, in the case of American people class are known to be liberated. They are known to be prone to public display of affection. That's why when we actually see American people publicly displaying their affection towards one another, it causes us culture shock, right? And the same thing is true when American people come here in the Philippines, and we might exhibit behaviors that are mutually exclusive to us lang na mga Filipinos. It also causes them culture shock as well, no? So, in addition, class, a man's action, habit, or character is considered to be good when it is not lacking of what is natural to man. Thus, when it is accordance with man's nature. Now, what is accordance with man's nature? Man's nature class is identified by his own intellect and rationality. Which means, if you are a man, then you should act like a man. You should not act like a dog or other animals. Right? So, ibig sabihin pala nito, if say for example, you identified yourself as a man and not a dog, then basically you have the ability to reason out, you have the privilege of free will. And because of that, you are capable of analyzing the experiences that you have, coming to a conclusion, applying the knowledge that you gain, and at the same time, class, decide for your own goodness. That is something that animals like dog do not have. We have this foundational moral principle, and before we go to its main definition, let's define principle first. Principle actually comes from the Latin word princeps, which means a beginning or a source. So talking about foundational moral principle, we are looking for the beginning or the source of morality itself. Now, where is this foundational moral principle? It says here, it is contained in the natural law which is written in the hearts of men. Now, regardless class of our differences in terms of culture, customs, religions, languages, etc., all concepts of morality say one thing, and that is to do good and avoid evil. There are different versions of the natural law or the foundational moral principle. Here are some. According to Confucius or Confucius, do not do unto others what you do not like others do unto you. For Christians who adapt the positive remark of Confucius, they said that do to others what you like others do to you. Now, aside from these two class, there are also other expression of the natural law. It is conveyed in the 5 pillars of Islam, in the 8 beatitudes of Buddhists, and the 10 commandments of Christians. Despite of differences, again, all of these expressions or manifestations of natural law say one thing, and that is to do good and avoid evil. Teachers are always perceived as role models. Role models when it comes to knowledge, skills, and values. There are many times that we believe our teachers more compared to how we believe our parents. Mas pinaniniwalaan pa natin yung mga itinuturo ng mga teachers natin compared doon sa mga tinuturo ng mga magulang natin. It is a manifestation class of how great our influence is to our students' lives. And because of this class, we need to prepare. We need to actually take our studies seriously, especially your college studies. Right? Because if we can make a difference positively, we can also make a difference negatively. In line with this class, it is emphasized in this lesson that a teacher as a person should be of good moral character. Now, when can we say that he or she is of good moral character? There are 4 identifying behaviors that we need to observe. The first one is being fully human. It means that as a teacher, you have realized substantially your potential as a human person. Being fully human class takes knowing yourself better. It's realizing your strengths and weaknesses as a person. And more importantly, class, you need to seek more knowledge, you need to seek more skills as a response to the idea that as a human person, you have many limitations as well. No? If you can understand yourself better, class, you also have the ability to understand other people as well. And remember, class, you are going to encounter different people in your profession. And you need to give maximum understanding if you want to last as a teacher. Second, being a loving person. You are caring in an unselfish and mature manner with yourself, other people, and God. So, you need to love yourself. And if you love yourself, class, you are capable of loving other people as well. Remember, yung mga i-handle mo ng mga estudyante in the future, hindi mo sila kadugo. In fact, you don't know the very nature of their identity. But as a teacher, you need to show affection sa kanila. By that, learning would be more meaningful. Third, being a virtuous person. It means you have acquired good habits and attitudes and you practice them consistently in your daily life. This is what I told you na you make it a part of yourself. You make it a habit and not just a one-time behavior. No? So, ibig sabihin pala, class, if you know about this morality, then you need to practice it. You need to walk your talk so that it would be easier for you to handle situations that require you to be virtuous. Lastly, being a morally mature person. You have reached a level of development emotionally, socially, mentally, spiritually appropriate to your developmental stage. It means, class, that your development as a person must be holistic as well. And although it requires us to develop, no, in the entire lifespan that we have, of course, this is something challenging, class, for us, no, na mga tao na magkakaroon ng privilege to teach in the future. Now, lastly, class, our act is moral when it is in accordance with our human nature. Our act is immoral when it is contrary to our human nature. Our intellect and free will make us different from and above the beast. And as a teacher, you are expected to be a person with moral character. Now, there is only a thin line between morality and values. That's why in this lesson, we are also going to talk about values and value formation. Speaking of this, there are two groups, class, that view values differently. We have Idealist Group and Relativist Group. Idealist Group, class, says that values remain unchanged amidst changing times, and they call this one as transcendent values because they are beyond changing times, beyond space and people. So even if, say for example, during the era of our ancestors, during the time of Rizal, the time of First World War, Paleolithic period, they are still the same, and until now, they are still perceived similarly. On the other hand, relativists claim that there are no universal and unchanging values. They assert that values are dependent on time and place. It means, class, that as time changes, values also change. No? Nagbabago ang tao, nagbabago din yung mga values na meron sa tao. How do we exactly form our values? There are 5 basic principles of value formation, and the first one is values are both taught and caught. Now, let's have taught first. When we say values or taught, class, it means that it is formally introduced to you. It means that your parents, when you were still young, no, directly told you that it is not okay or it is okay. No? For example, sinabi talaga directly na, anak, bawal magsinungaling. Anak, kapag ang kausap mo ay mas matanda, kailangan gumamit ka ng po at opo. So, ibig sabihin na to, class, you are consciously aware that you are being taught to. Diba? On the other hand, values are caught. It means, class, that even if hindi directly itinuro sa'yo, but because you can observe it in your environment, you can observe other people doing it, you are also slowly acquiring the values. No? For example, class, anong tawag dito, yung mga tao sa paligid mo ay masisipag. So, ibig sabihin, ikaw din mismo, na-acquire mo yung value ng pagiging masipag. No? Sa room, for example nyo, yung mga roommates mo is mahilig mag-study. And because of that, ikaw din, hinay-hinay na-acquire mo na mag-study. Walang nagsabi sa'yo na kailangan mo mag-study, but because yung mga roommates mo is may mga ganyan na mga values, then, of course, na-acquire mo na din. Second, values have cognitive, affective, and behavioral dimensions. Values have a cognitive dimension. Remember, class, I always tell you that you cannot teach what you do not know, and you cannot understand what you do not know, right? You cannot give what you do not have. So, the same thing is true when it comes to values. Second, values are in the affective domain or objectives, no? In themselves, they have an affective dimension. For instance, it is not enough to know what honesty is or why one should be honest. One has to feel something towards honesty, be moved towards honesty, and preferable to dishonesty. So, it means, class, na you cannot give love if you yourself do not experience love. No? You cannot, say for example, remain loyal to a person if ikaw din mismo hindi mo na feel yung hindi mo na feel na may isang tao na loyal din sa'yo. Diba? So, yun po. Third, we have values also have behavioral dimension. So, living by the value is the true acid test. If we really value what value, like dishonesty. So, it means, class, we need to walk our talk. And by walking our talk, it means that we value the value, right? Next, value formation includes formation in the cognitive, affective, and behavioral aspects. So, just like what I mentioned, class, na value exists, no? A value exists within ourselves if it takes to include these aspects, class, no? Value formation is a training of the intellect and will. Exactly. So it is not enough that you only know this value. You also need to discipline yourself in order to make this value a part of yourself. No, you need to make it a habit. Next, virtuous versus vicious life and their effect on the will. So a virtuous life strengthens you to live by the right values and live a life of abundance and joy, while a vicious life leads you to perdition or misery. No? So of course, basically a vicious life will give you harms, unlike virtuous life, right? So vicious is the opposite of virtuous. Speaking of values, Max Keller came up with his hierarchy of values. So when you say hierarchy, it means that values are ranked, no, from the lowest level up to the highest level. And with this, we are going to start with the lowest level, which is the pleasure values. When you say pleasure, we are dealing with what is pleasant against what is unpleasant. So the agreeable against the disagreeable. So this includes, class, our sensual feelings and our experiences of pleasure and pain. The second level includes the vital values. Values, class, which is not mutually exclusive only within ourselves, but more importantly, it includes the community as part of our environment. So health, vitality, capability, and excellence. Without question, these values affect our community as a whole. Third level, we have spiritual values. According here, values that are independent of the whole sphere of the body and of the environment. Grasp in spiritual acts of preferring, loving, or hating. Sample, the static values. So when you say static, class, it deals with beauty, our values of wisdom, diba? The highest level, class, is the values of the holy. Holy talaga, no? Appear only in regard to objects intentionally given as absolute objects. Say for example, belief, adoration, bliss. When you say bliss, class, it pertains to happiness, no? much, class. If you have questions regarding the discussion, do not hesitate to ask me virtually or personally. See you!